LeBron James was leaving a restaurant when something caught his eye. On the corner of the street, a boy was rummaging through the trash, his hands shaking with hunger, his eyes lost. LeBron hesitated for a moment, but something inside him made him follow that boy. Who was he? What led him to look for food among scraps? What LeBron discovered next was much more than he expected, a truth so shocking it would change everything. And when he finally understood what was happening, he realized that that night would never leave his mind. LeBron hesitated for a moment, watching the boy cower against the alley wall. He was thin, dirty, and his torn t-shirt barely covered the bones visible beneath his skin. The boy pulled a bag out of the trash can, his nimble hands rummaging through the leftover food as if he did this every day. LeBron felt a tightness in his chest. He had seen situations like this before, growing up in a neighborhood where children had a hard time. But something about that scene stopped him from just getting in the car and driving away. He approached slowly, not wanting to scare him. The boy noticed his presence and froze, his eyes wide with fear, like a cornered animal. LeBron raised his hands, a peaceful gesture, trying to show he meant no harm. "Hey, it's okay." His voice was low, trying to sound reassuring. "Are you hungry?" The boy didn't respond. He just held the bag tighter, as if LeBron was going to try to take it. LeBron realized he needed to earn his trust. He looked around and saw a small restaurant still open, so he pointed there. "Come with me. We can get you something to actually eat." The boy hesitated for a moment, his eyes darting from the trash can to LeBron. Hunger overcame fear. He slowly got up and followed him, keeping a safe distance. When they entered the restaurant, the yellowish light revealed even more details. He looked no more than 9 years old, his hair disheveled, his skin marked with dirt. His eyes, however, had something that LeBron recognized immediately, a mixture of distrust and hope. The waitress looked at the two curiously, but didn't ask any questions when LeBron ordered a burger and a glass of milk. The boy remained motionless while the food did not arrive, his eyes fixed on the table, his hands folded in his lap. When the plate was placed in front of him, he didn't wait. He picked up the burger and bit into it as if he was afraid someone would take it away. "Slowly," LeBron said with a sad smile. "No one is going to take this from you." The boy glanced at him, still chewing but not saying anything. LeBron leaned his arms on the table, trying to understand. Who was this boy? Where were your parents? He looked at the dirty clothes, the bruises on his thin arms, and knew that this wasn't the first time he had gone through this. Something inside LeBron made him want to know more. "What is your name?" The boy paused for a moment, as if deciding whether to respond. Then he lowered his eyes and murmured, "Daniel." LeBron nodded, repeating the name in his mind. "Do you live around here, Daniel?" The boy shrugged. "I don't know." That was enough for LeBron to understand. He didn't have a home. LeBron's mind went back to his own childhood, to the difficult days when his mother struggled to pay the rent, to the nights when they had to sleep in the car. He remembered the feeling of uncertainty, of not knowing what the future held, but he had his mother by his side, always doing her best to protect him. Daniel seemed to be completely alone. LeBron took a deep breath. "And your parents?" The boy looked at him quickly, then looked away again. "My mother disappeared." The answer was spoken in a whisper, but it carried immense weight. LeBron felt a chill down his spine. "What do you mean by disappeared?" Daniel pushed the glass of milk with his small hands, looking at the white foam without drinking. "She said she was going to come back, but it's been a long time." LeBron's heart sank. "How long?" The boy shrugged. "Many days." The way he spoke made it clear that he wasn't sure how much time had passed, but for a child, many days already meant something devastating. LeBron ran his hand over his face, trying to process it. A child abandoned on the streets, living on scraps of food. He looked at Daniel again and realized that behind the hardened shell that survival required, there was still a boy waiting. He hoped his mother would come back, that someone would find him, that everything would be okay. LeBron realized he couldn't just pay for that meal and leave. "Do you have somewhere to stay?" Daniel shook his head. The silence between the two was interrupted by the sound of the restaurant door opening. A man hurried in, his eyes scanning the room, until they found Daniel. His face contorted into something between relief and anger. "There you are." Daniel shrugged his shoulders, as if he wanted to disappear into the chair. The man walked to the table and held the boy's arm firmly. "How many times have I told you not to go out there, huh?" LeBron stood up instinctively. "Who are you?" The man looked at him and snorted. "I'm his uncle. And who are you?" LeBron crossed his arms. "Someone who wants to know why this kid was scavenging for food." The man clenched his jaw. "He's my problem." Daniel didn't say anything, his body tense, his eyes downcast. LeBron felt something was wrong, very wrong. "Do you have his documents? Any proof that he's really your uncle?" The man narrowed his eyes. "Listen, I don't need to prove anything to you. This kid always gives me trouble, but he comes with me." LeBron noticed the fear in Daniel's eyes and made a decision. "I won't let you take him without an explanation." The man frowned, his eyes growing colder. "And who do you think you are to get involved?" LeBron kept his gaze steady. "Someone who cares." The silence became heavy. The waitress behind the counter looked at the scene with concern. Daniel shrank further into his chair, his eyes going from LeBron to the man, not knowing what to do. LeBron felt deep in his soul that something was very wrong. What should he do? Let the boy go with that man, or trust the instinct that told him Daniel was in danger? Stories like this need to be told. Every day, thousands of children face unimaginable realities, and only when we look beyond the obvious can we truly make a difference. This channel brings real, impactful stories that make us reflect on what really matters. To follow more stories like this, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Each story has the power to transform the way we see the world, and you won't want to miss the next ones. The air inside the restaurant seemed to grow heavier. LeBron couldn't take his eyes off the man in front of him, trying to decipher his intentions. The way he held Daniel's arm, the abrupt way he spoke, everything indicated that the boy wasn't safe. The fear in the boy's eyes confirmed this feeling. "Let him go," LeBron said, his voice firm but controlled. The man laughed, a short, dry laugh. "Look at the great LeBron James playing the hero." Daniel shrank even more, his eyes fixed on the table, as if trying to disappear. "This has nothing to do with me," LeBron continued. "It has to do with him. He doesn't want to go with you." The man squeezed Daniel's arm tighter. "He has no choice." LeBron felt his blood boil. What was happening there? Who was this guy, really? He didn't seem like someone concerned about Daniel's well-being. The waitress behind the counter began nervously fiddling with her phone, probably weighing whether she should call the police. Other customers looked out of the corner of their eye, noticing something was wrong, but not wanting to get involved. LeBron had no doubt something needed to be done. But what was the best approach? He knew that any hasty action could make the situation worse. "Daniel," he said calmly, lowering his voice a little so as not to scare him even more. "Is this man really your uncle?" The boy hesitated. His breathing became shorter, and his eyes filled with unshed tears. Silence answered for him. The man pulled Daniel sharply. "This has gone too far. We're leaving." LeBron stood between them. "You're not going anywhere." The man's muscles tensed. He looked around, realizing he now had the attention of everyone in the restaurant. Still, he didn't seem willing to give in. "That doesn't concern you." LeBron crossed his arms. "From the moment I see a scared boy being dragged by someone he doesn't even confirm is his family, that becomes my problem." The waitress stepped forward. "I've already called the police," he announced, his voice trembling but determined. The man swore under his breath. He looked at LeBron with suppressed anger, then at Daniel, who was trembling silently. "You just got yourself where you shouldn't have been." He released the boy's arm with a push and left the restaurant in a hurry. LeBron let out a breath he didn't even realize he was holding. "Are you okay?" he asked Daniel, who remained motionless. The boy nodded, but his expression showed that he was still in shock. The waitress approached. "The police are on the way. They can help." LeBron looked at Daniel. He knew that the arrival of the police could mean anything: a temporary shelter, a search for family, or even something worse. The system didn't always protect children like Daniel the way it should. "I'll stay with you," LeBron assured. The boy finally looked up, for the first time seeming to believe he wasn't alone. Minutes later, the police arrived. 2 officers entered the restaurant and walked towards them. One of them, a middle-aged man with an experienced look, knelt down beside Daniel. "Hi, champion. My name is Sergeant Miller. Can you tell me what's going on?" Daniel hesitated, eyes darting from LeBron to the cops. LeBron placed a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder. "You can trust them." Daniel swallowed hard before finally responding. "My mother said she would be back, but she never came back." The police officers exchanged glances. The sergeant took out a small notebook. "Do you remember where the last time you saw her was?" Daniel nodded and named a neighborhood. LeBron saw the officials taking notes and exchanging more looks. It clearly meant something to them. "Is something wrong?" LeBron asked. The sergeant sighed. "This neighborhood has a complicated history. Some people disappear and are never seen again." LeBron's stomach sank. "So are you going to investigate?" "Let's go. But we need to take Daniel to a temporary shelter in the meantime." Daniel's eyes widened. "I don't want to go." The officer tried to smile reassuringly. "It's just for a while, until we find your mother." LeBron noticed the desperation growing in the boy. He knew that fear well, the fear of being forgotten, of getting lost even more in the system. "What if he stays with me?" LeBron asked without thinking. The police looked at him in surprise. "You mean adopt him?" LeBron took a deep breath. He didn't know exactly what he was proposing, but he knew he couldn't just let Daniel disappear into some shelter. "I don't know what will happen next, but for now, he needs someone." The officers looked at each other. "It's not that simple, Mr. James, but considering the circumstances, we can look at this temporary possibility, as long as social services agree." LeBron looked at Daniel. "Do you want to come with me?" The boy hesitated for a moment before shaking his head. The sergeant sighed. "Let's do this the right way." LeBron knew this was just the beginning, but one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let Daniel face all of this alone. What if, on any given night, you found a child alone, rummaging through the trash to survive? That's exactly what happened to LeBron James. But what started as a simple gesture of kindness soon turned into something much bigger. Who was that boy? Why was he there? And above all, what was really behind that situation? What LeBron discovered was much more than he could have imagined. And the truth behind this story is shocking. LeBron looked at Daniel in the passenger seat as the car glided through the city streets. The boy kept his gaze fixed on the window, his small body sunk into the leather seat. It seemed like he still couldn't believe what was happening, as if at any moment someone was going to snatch him away and throw him back into the unknown. LeBron understood that feeling. Growing up in Akron, he knew the fear of uncertainty, of the lack of a stable home, of the insecurity that comes with poverty. But unlike Daniel, he always had his mother by his side. Daniel had no one. The silence in the car was broken by LeBron's cell phone ringing. It was an unknown number. He hesitated for a second before answering. "LeBron James." The voice on the other end was firm, professional. "Yes, this is the social worker responsible for Daniel's case. I heard that you are willing to take him in temporarily." LeBron shot a quick look at the boy, who was still quiet. "Yes, I want to help." The woman paused before continuing. "We need to talk. There is more to this story than you realize." LeBron felt a chill down his spine. "I'm listening." Daniel's mother really disappeared, but it wasn't a simple case of abandonment. She had been threatened before disappearing, and the man who showed up at the restaurant claiming to be his uncle, we didn't find any family ties between them. LeBron felt the tightness in his chest grow. So who was he? "We are investigating, but there are indications that Daniel may be linked to something bigger. His mother worked in a suspicious place, and there are records that she tried to report something days before she disappeared." LeBron's blood ran cold. "Are you telling me that this boy could be in danger?" The silence on the other end of the line confirmed his suspicions. LeBron felt the weight of the situation increase. He wasn't just helping a lost boy. He could be in the middle of something much more serious. He looked again at Daniel, who was now playing absently with the zipper of his coat, oblivious to the conversation. "What can I do?" LeBron asked, feeling the adrenaline rush through his body. "Just be careful. We will provide temporary protection for Daniel, but he cannot be alone. There are people who may want to find you before the truth comes out." The connection is over, but LeBron's worry has only just begun. They arrived at LeBron's house, and Daniel hesitantly got out of the car. He looked around, eyes wide as he saw the immensity of the property. For someone who didn't even have a fixed place to sleep, it seemed like another world. "Is this all yours?" Daniel asked, his voice low. "Yeah, but for now, it can also be a little bit of yours." The boy didn't respond, but the way his expression softened showed that that response meant more than words could express. LeBron took Daniel inside and showed him a room. The boy walked slowly through the space, as if afraid to touch anything. LeBron went to the closet and took out his t-shirt and sweatshirt. "You can take a hot shower. Leave your clothes here, then we'll sort them out." Daniel picked up the clothes and disappeared into the bathroom. While waiting, LeBron took out his cell phone and texted the social worker. "He's safe with me, but if there's someone looking for him, we need to act quickly." He didn't know what the future held, but something inside him told him that this story was far from over. Minutes later, Daniel came out of the bathroom, dressed in loose clothes, his hair still dripping. For the first time, it felt lighter. "Are you hungry?" The boy nodded, and LeBron smiled. "Come. I'll show you the best part of this house." They went to the kitchen where LeBron started to prepare something to eat. In the middle of the process, his cell phone vibrated. He picked up the device and saw a message from the social worker. "We need to talk now. Something urgent has come up." LeBron's heart raced. "Daniel, stay here for a minute. I'll be right back." He came out of the kitchen and answered the call. "What happened?" The voice on the other end sounded even more tense than before. "We found something about Daniel's mother, and it's not good news." LeBron held his breath. "Is she alive?" The woman hesitated before answering. "We don't know yet, but we have reason to believe she may be being held against her will." The weight of that information hit LeBron like a punch in the gut. "Where?" "We're still investigating, but we need Daniel to tell us what he knows. It may be the only clue we have." LeBron glanced toward the kitchen, where Daniel fiddled with cutlery, oblivious to what was happening. He would need to find a way to tell him everything without scaring him even more. It was at that moment that something caught his attention. A flashing red light at the front gate. The security system indicated that someone was outside. LeBron frowned and went to the window. When he looked outside, he saw a car parked on the other side of the street, its headlights off. His instinct screamed. He knew this was no coincidence, and then everything became even clearer. They didn't have much time. LeBron continued to watch the car across the street. The dark windows prevented him from seeing who was inside, but he knew that was no coincidence. After everything he had heard about Daniel and his mother, there was no doubt that someone was after the boy. The question was, who, and what would they do if they found out he was there? He took a deep breath, remaining calm. If there was one thing he learned in decisive moments on and off the court, it was that acting under pressure required strategy, not impulsiveness. He picked up his cell phone and called Sergeant Miller, the police officer who was following the case. "There's a suspicious car parked in front of my house. After everything I've been told about Daniel and his mother, I can't ignore it." "Stay where you are," Miller replied, his voice tense. "Don't leave the boy alone. Let's send a car now." LeBron hung up and went back to the kitchen. Daniel was still there, sitting at the counter, playing with a piece of bread as he waited. His innocent look contrasted with the invisible chaos swirling around him. "It is good too?" Daniel asked, noticing LeBron's worried expression. He forced a smile. "Yes, but tell me one thing. Have you ever seen a car like this before?" Daniel looked out the window. As soon as he saw the vehicle, his face turned pale. "He followed me," he murmured, almost in a whisper, "since my mother disappeared." LeBron felt his blood run cold. Before he could say anything, the car on the other side of the street turned on its headlights and began to move slowly. He didn't speed up, nor did he try to hide. He just walked past the house, as if to make it clear that he knew exactly where Daniel was. A few seconds later, the sound of sirens broke the silence of the night. A police car turned the corner and parked in front of the house. The suspect car disappeared into the darkness before the officers could do anything. Sergeant Miller got out of the patrol car and walked to the door. LeBron opened it before he even hit. "They know where he is," LeBron said, straight to the point. The police officer nodded. "And that confirms our suspicions. This boy wasn't just abandoned. He and his mother were running away from something." Daniel watched everything in silence, his eyes wide. "Are we going to find my mother?" The question made the entire room stop. Miller sighed, bending down until he was at the boy's level. "Let's do everything we can, but we need you to help us. Do you remember anything else? Anywhere she could have gone?" Daniel frowned, pursing his lips as if trying to pull up a distant memory. Then his face lit up. "She always talked about a place, an old warehouse near the train station. He said that if something happened, I should go there." Miller stood up immediately. "That's more than enough. Let's investigate." LeBron looked at Daniel, who was now holding his hands tightly, anxiety brimming. He knew he couldn't just wait. "I'll go with you." Miller stared at him. "LeBron, this is dangerous. You've already done a lot protecting this boy." LeBron crossed his arms. "And I'll keep doing it." The sergeant assessed the determination in his eyes and realized there was no point in arguing. A short time later, LeBron and Daniel were in the back seat of the police car, heading towards the warehouse. The city looked different that night. The lights flickered strangely. The streets were emptier than usual. When they arrived at the indicated location, the building seemed completely abandoned. The windows were broken. The rust was consuming the structure. Everything indicated that no one had lived there for years. But Daniel was right. His mother had been there. The police searched the place until they found recent traces of someone living there. An improvised bed, scattered clothes, and a glass with water still half full. Then they heard a noise. LeBron turned toward the sound and saw a shadow moving in the back of the warehouse. "Mother!" Daniel ran before anyone could catch him. And then, there, in the middle of the darkness, a woman appeared. Disheveled hair, face marked by tension, but the eyes were the same as Daniel's. Emotion took over everyone as she fell to her knees, hugging her son tightly. "Are you okay, my love?" Her voice broke mid-sentence. "I thought I would never see you again." LeBron felt a weight lift off his chest. Miller approached cautiously. "You need to come with us. You're safe now." The woman looked at the police officer, fear still present in her eyes. "They are after me." "We know," Miller confirmed. "But now you don't need to run away anymore." The way back was silent, but different. Daniel was no longer alone. His mother was by his side, and the nightmare was finally over. At the police station, while the procedures were being resolved, LeBron said goodbye to Daniel. "So, you're going to be fine now." The boy looked at him for a moment before throwing himself into his arms. "Thanks." LeBron held on tight, feeling that somehow that night had changed everything. When he pulled away, Daniel smiled. "Can we still see each other?" LeBron smiled back. "Always." And that night, as he drove home, he realized that some stories don't end. They just find a new beginning. Driving home that night, LeBron felt something inside him had changed. It wasn't just the feeling of having done the right thing, but the awareness that sometimes the biggest impacts happen in the most unexpected moments. He had come across Daniel by chance, but nothing in life happens without a reason. That boy's story was the same as that of so many other children invisible to the world, struggling to survive without knowing if anyone cared. LeBron couldn't just look the other way. And when he took action, he realized that it wasn't just Daniel who needed that meeting. He needed it himself, because in the end, helping someone also transforms the person you help. Daniel, even so young, carried impressive strength. He had faced loneliness, fear, and uncertainty, but he never lost hope. The hope of finding his mother again, of being safe, of having a different future. That hope was what made it all worth it. LeBron knew that not all stories had happy endings, that the world was unfair for many people, that life was hard for those who didn't have opportunities. But he also knew that for someone, a single act of kindness could change everything. A plate of food, an attentive look, a word of encouragement, simple things. But they could mean the beginning of a new journey. Daniel found his mother, but his story didn't end there. Now he would have another chance, and LeBron knew this chance could make all the difference. As he drove, he looked at the illuminated city around him. How many other children like Daniel were there, waiting for a miracle? He couldn't help them all, but that night reminded him that every life touched was a victory. The real impact was not just in what we achieved, but in how we use those achievements to change the world around us. And sometimes changing a person's world is enough to make it all worth it. Stories like this show us that sometimes a simple gesture can change a life forever. If you believe that everyone deserves a second chance, write "hope" in the comments. I want to know your opinion about this story and how small attitudes can transform the world. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications to follow more exciting stories like this. And don't stop there. There's another video on your screen right now that you need to watch. Click and continue this inspiring journey.